The morning air was crisp at Andrews Air Force Base. Flags rippled in the breeze as thousands gathered to hear President Donald Trump deliver a long-awaited speech honoring America's military. Families, veterans, cadets, and service members stood in neat formation under the rising sun. Among them was Airman Caleb Monroe, just 24, his uniform sharp, his expression uneasy. His mother had traveled from Ohio to see him recognized with his fellow airmen. But Caleb's attention wasn't on the president's words. In his hand, he gripped a worn, crumpled letter, personal, irreplaceable. The crowd roared as Trump appeared on the massive screen and approached the podium. He greeted military officials and began, "I'm here today to thank the brave men and women of the United States military. You are the reason this nation stands proud and strong." Caleb swallowed hard. His pulse quickened. He had never been one to seek attention, but this day was not about comfort. It was about a promise he had made years earlier. His fingers tightened around the letter, his eyes stinging with emotion. A veteran nearby noticed and asked gently, "You all right, son?" Caleb nodded, though inside he was anything but calm. He knew he had to act before it was too late. 3 years earlier, Caleb had been just another small-town graduate from Ohio. His father had passed when he was 9, and his mother worked tirelessly to support them. Through it all, his best friend, Derek Sandoval, had been his anchor. Inspired by Derek's father, a proud Air Force veteran, the two had dreamed of enlisting together. They often joked about the future. Derek would flash a grin and say, "Be the pilot, you'll be the serious one. I'll fly over and wave at you." Their laughter cemented a pact. They would serve side by side, no matter what, and they kept their word until fate intervened. Just 6 months into basic training, Derek collapsed on a run. He had hidden his dizziness and chest pain, afraid of being disqualified. It was an aggressive heart condition. Within days, Derek was gone. At his funeral, Caleb knelt by the casket and whispered a vow only Derek's parents heard. "I'll serve for both of us, and one day, I'll make sure the world knows who Derek was." That day had come. The letter Caleb held was one Derek had written during training, addressed to the future President of the United States, but it had never been sent. And now, with the President just feet away, Caleb knew it was time to keep his promise. He stepped forward, heart pounding. Trump's words echoed over the loudspeakers. "This country owes you everything. Our future is brighter because of you." Caleb broke formation, raised the letter high, and called out, "Mr. President." The crowd hushed, heads turning. Security moved in, but Trump raised his hand. "Wait, he has something to say." Trembling but steadying his voice, Caleb spoke. "It's not about me, sir. It's about someone who should have been here today." Trump gestured him forward. Gasps rippled through the audience as Caleb climbed the steps. Trump handed him the microphone. "My name is Airman First Class Caleb Monroe. I enlisted with my best friend, Derek Sandoval. He never made it to service. He wrote this letter before he passed. Addressed to you, Mr. President. May I read it?" Trump nodded. Silence blanketed the base. Caleb unfolded the fragile paper and began, "Dear Mr. President, if this ever reaches you, it means something incredible happened. Maybe I became someone worth listening to. My name is Derek Sandoval. I'm just a kid from Ohio, starting Air Force training. It's hard, and I don't know if I'll make it. But I want to tell you this. Serving isn't about medals or recognition. It's about hope. Where I come from, kids stop dreaming before they're 16. But in this uniform, I feel part of something bigger. I don't want to be remembered as brave. I want to be remembered as grateful. Grateful for the flag, for the chance to serve, for my best friend Caleb. If I don't make it, I hope he does. I hope he carries both our dreams. And maybe, one day, someone will hear my story not because it's special, but because it's one of many." Tears blurred Caleb's vision. The audience, soldiers, generals, families, was silent, many crying openly. Closing the letter, Caleb whispered, "I promised I'd share his story. Today, I kept that promise." For a moment, Trump stood motionless. Then he stepped forward, took the letter, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his jacket. "This will stay with me forever," he said. Turning to the mic, his voice carried with rare gravity. "Today was meant to honor our military, but it became something greater, a reminder. We celebrate medals and victories, but today we celebrate a promise kept, a fallen airman, and the spirit of America." Then, in a solemn gesture, President Trump turned back to Caleb and saluted him. The crowd erupted, applause echoing across the base, not for the president, not for the ceremony, but for Derek, and for Caleb, who had carried his friend's memory with courage. After the ceremony, soldiers and families surrounded Caleb. A general clapped him on the back. A fellow airman whispered, "I lost my brother in Iraq. Thank you." A mother wept against his shoulder, saying, "You reminded me of my daughter. She never made it home." Even hardened Marines wiped their eyes. Overwhelmed, Caleb later found a quiet corner. He pulled a photo of Derek from his wallet and whispered, "We did it, bro. I kept my word." By that evening, videos of the moment flooded the internet. Clips of Caleb reading Derek's letter went viral. Hashtags like #for Derek, #the promise, and hashtag silent letter trended worldwide. And in that powerful moment, Caleb finally understood. Sometimes, the quietest voices echo the loudest, and his friend's voice was now heard across the nation. News outlets spoke of the young airman's interruption, not with criticism, but with admiration. Even networks that normally opposed President Trump praised the way he handled the moment. On Twitter, celebrities quickly shared the clip. Actor Mark Wahlberg wrote, "That's a hero." Both of them. NFL star Jonathan Parks added, "This young man just reminded us what real sacrifice looks like." Even Elon Musk chimed in, "That letter belongs in a museum. It belongs to the nation." But for Caleb, none of that mattered. That night, back in his bunk, he lay staring at the ceiling, trying to process the whirlwind of the day. His phone buzzed endlessly: texts, emails, interview requests. He ignored them all until one message caught his eye. "You don't know me. I served with Derek's father. What you did today brought him back to life for a moment. Thank you." Caleb's eyes finally filled, and he let the tear fall. This was never about fame. It was about remembrance. Back in Ohio, Derek's mother, Mrs. Sandoval, sat frozen in her recliner, watching the broadcast for the 5th time that day. She clutched a photo of her son in one hand and a tissue in the other. "He really did it," she whispered. Caleb kept his promise. Derek's father, once a proud airman himself, had passed away 2 years after losing his son, leaving a hollow silence in their home. But that day, hearing Caleb's voice echo through the television, something shifted. The house felt warmer. She picked up the phone and called Caleb's mother. Through tears, she said, "Your boy gave me my son back today, if only for a moment." Together, they wept. In a town long dulled by grief, Caleb's act sparked something new: hope. Not just for the Sandovals, but for every parent who ever feared their child's story might be forgotten. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Trump returned to the White House. Alone in the Oval Office, he pulled Derek's letter from his jacket and read it again and again. Finally, he placed it in a drawer reserved only for the most personal keepsakes. Later that evening, in a private meeting, he told his staff, "We're doing something special for that airman. Not for politics. For Derek." Plans began for a national tribute. A week later, Caleb received a formal letter sealed with the presidential crest. His hand shook as he opened it. "Dear Airman Monroe, you've reminded this nation what it truly means to serve. I would be honored if you, your mother, and Derek's mother would join me at the White House to present Derek's letter to the country. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States." Caleb's heart raced. His mother wept when she saw it. When he called Mrs. Sandoval, she fell silent, then whispered, "Yes, he would have loved that." Days later, Caleb, dressed in full uniform, stood in the Oval Office beside his mother and Derek's mother. President Trump greeted them warmly. "This isn't politics," he said softly. "This is personal." Turning to Mrs. Sandoval, he added, "Ma'am, thank you for raising a son whose words have changed the way I see service." Then, with ceremony and care, he presented Caleb with a folded American flag. "This flew over the White House yesterday. I want you to have it." Finally, he made an announcement no one expected. A scholarship would be created in Derek's name, the Sandoval Honor Scholarship for young leaders who embodied sacrifice, loyalty, and service. Mrs. Sandoval broke down, nearly collapsing, as Caleb caught her. The weight of Derek's legacy had just been lifted into the future. A month later, Arlington National Cemetery hosted a national tribute. Veterans, generals, and Gold Star families gathered to honor fallen service members. Derek Sandoval was given a special remembrance. Caleb spoke again, this time with Mrs. Sandoval at his side. "I'm not a hero," he said firmly. "I just kept a promise. The real hero was my best friend Derek. He never got to wear the uniform outside of training, but he lived every day like a soldier." He held up Derek's letter. "This letter now rests in the Library of Congress, but its true power isn't in history books. It's in the young people who choose to serve something greater than themselves." The crowd rose to their feet. One by one, veterans raised their hands in salute. It was a moment that spread far beyond the cemetery. Recruitment centers soon saw an unexpected surge of interest. Schools launched letters to the future programs, encouraging students to write about their dreams for America. At one high school in Texas, a student read Derek's letter aloud during morning announcements. The entire building fell into silence. Talk shows and news outlets highlighted the story, not for drama, but for truth. And when President Trump mentioned Derek's name during a speech to Congress, even his harshest critics stood and clapped. For once, it wasn't about politics. It was about principle. Weeks later, Caleb returned home to Ohio. Before going back to base, he stopped at Derek's grave. Kneeling in uniform, he placed a wooden box at the headstone. Inside was the White House flag, a photo from the Oval Office, and his own handwritten note, "Dear Derek, you made it. Bro, the world knows your name. I'll carry your story for the rest of my life. Always your brother, Caleb." He stayed for hours, and when he left, the grave no longer felt like just a marker. It had become a monument to a promise kept. Months later, Caleb reluctantly agreed to appear on a national talk show. Introduced as the airman who silenced a nation, he smiled shyly. "I wasn't trying to silence anyone," he said. "I just wanted someone to hear Derek." The host asked, "If Derek were here now, what would you say to him?" Without hesitation, Caleb replied, "I'd tell him he mattered. He still matters, and his dream didn't die with him, it's flying higher than ever." The audience stood in ovation. The following year, the first recipient of the honor scholarship was named Lena Hart, daughter of a single mother and aspiring Air Force engineer. In her essay she wrote, "I never knew Derek, but his letter made me believe again. I want to serve for those who couldn't." Mrs. Sandoval attended the ceremony and embraced Lena. "You're part of his legacy now," she said. Lena smiled through tears. "And he's part of my dream." The scholarship grew, helping dozens of students across the country take flight under Derek's name. Years later, Caleb settled quietly in Colorado after completing his service. Each year on the anniversary of Derek's passing, the family sent him a card that read, "You kept his promise. We'll never forget." And in the halls of the Air Force Academy, Derek's photo now hung beneath a plaque that read, "The letter that echoed." One day, Caleb stood before a new class of cadets, holding the fragile letter in his hands. He said, "This was written by someone who never got the chance to serve. But his words changed the world. Never underestimate your voice. One voice, when spoken with truth and love, can move a nation." The cadets rose to their feet, saluting one by one. The promise lived on.